Pokemon X and Y speedruns have been using these same exact strategies for the past 10 years. And when something stands as the main speedrun strategy for that long without any big changes, it's hard to imagine anything could ever change that, which has always been the case for Pokemon X and Y. That is, until a couple weeks ago when a speedrunner decided, I want to speedrun X and Y, but in a more fun way. What was originally something just for fun began to look like a strategy that could revolutionize the speedrun in a way that Pokemon X and Y has desperately needed, as the games have always been considered to be one of the most miserable Pokemon games to speedrun because of those old strategies. So to properly explain this revolutionary journey, I'm going to dive through X and Y's 10-year-old speedrun route, show you what makes it come together in a frustrating way, then break down exactly why this fun new strategy was never properly explored for the past decade. Speaking of decades, I need to talk about a game celebrating its 6-year anniversary, and that's built to give you plenty of stuff to pass the time with, as well as plenty of rewards snagged during its 6-year celebration. This game is built to make the time fly, and it makes it pretty easy to get into. When you download Raid Shadow Legends from here, you'll get a giant head start with a party filled with plenty of powerful free-to-play hero combinations, which should give you more than enough time to get a grasp for how to take on its hours of content, with things like boss stages or this big tower really testing your brain with strategy. Or you can grind up minions on the side while you're taking care of your daily life. Truly, the sky's the limit with Raid. And there's no better time than now to jump in during Raid's 6-year celebration, as they're giving away a little birthday package. You'll get a nice jumpstart with this epic hero Zargala, who comes with a beautiful starter pack that you can then combine with these 4 promo codes that are redeemable to newer and current players every 24 hours, which you can then stack with this code for the legendary champion Supreme Gallic, who has enough power to speedrun through minions and bosses alike. If you're not feeling Supreme Gallic, you can just choose one of these familiar faces like Sun Wukong, Alice the Wanderer, or the Asgardian legend by redeeming any one of the following 4 codes on the screen within the first 48 hours of downloading Raid. Since you can only choose one of these 4 promos, I'll probably be bringing Loki along for my journey, which you can join by clicking the link in the description or scanning the QR code to download the game and take advantage of these amazing offers. Then once you finish downloading, you can join my clan, Coffee Crew, where we can all grow stronger together. Thanks again for Raid for the sponsor, and I hope to see you on the battlefield. One of the most defining factors of Pokemon X and Y speedrun route is the brutal types that the first 5 gym leaders specialize in. Normally, this isn't a crazy issue, but somehow each one of these gym leaders provides an oddly niche roadblock that forces us to swap to a new party member before each gym. As an example, the first gym leader Viola walls all 3 starter Pokemon with moves like Water Sport obliterating Fennekin's potential, forcing Chespin to rely on rollout, and Froakie needing a lot of extra experience to get strong enough to even stand a chance. So the best and oddly faster solution becomes to catch Bunnelby and trade it for a Farfetch to fight the first gym. But then another problem arose. Because despite Farfetch having a really good way of speeding up the journey from Gym 1 all the way to Gym 2, it couldn't really handle the second gym that specializes in rock types very well. So we then decided, let's swap to Hawlucha to handle it, along with Gym 3 and 4. But because Hawlucha can't handle the electric gym well, let's just have the free Lucario take over and make the route seem really messy and weird. So with all that said, I imagine you might be thinking that this is where speedrunners made the change to the route, as catching and using 5 different Pokemon sounds really slow, but you'd actually be wrong about that. Oddly enough, using 5 different Pokemon is actually faster, but everything we've strategized after the 5th gym is where the real problem lies. You see, once speedrunners have passed the 5th gym, we'll typically take a detour towards Comarine City and into a building where if you have enough friendship on a Pokemon, you'll receive a Lucky Egg as a reward from an NPC. And when a Pokemon is holding on to this Lucky Egg item, it'll earn extra amounts of experience from each battle, letting us sweep even faster thanks to all those extra levels. Truly, it's hard to understate how amazing this item actually is for speedrunning, as about 5 different Pokemon speedruns, including X and Y, use a Lucky Egg, and have had a massive amount of success with speeding up these games to be even faster. So a world where we don't use it has never really been seriously considered. What if someone with a lack of motivation to speedrun Pokemon X and Y with the best known strategies got really bored? Well, sometimes that's exactly what you need to revolutionize a speedrun, and the one to do it was none other than the world record holder himself, Headbob. Pokemon speedrunner Headbob is not only the X and Y world record holder, but is also the undisputed king of Nintendo 3DS Pokemon speedruns, holding the record in every single one of them. Headbob's original Pokemon X and Y world record was achieved nearly 3 years ago with an earth-shattering 3-hour, 30-minute, and 29-second time. While this time is incredibly monumental and very hard to beat, the factors that make it extremely hard to beat center around what you have to do to get the Lucky Egg in the first place. Remember when I mentioned that the Lucky Egg is received when showing an NPC a Pokemon that's earned a ton of friendship? Yeah, well, it's not just a random amount of friendship, it's the maximum amount of friendship points possible at 255 friendship points. And earning friendship in a Pokemon game is quite difficult in a speedrun setting where you don't have every item, method, or resource available to increase your points as fast as possible. So keep that in mind when I say that Pokemon X and Y has been what I consider to be the most miserable Pokemon game to speedrun of all time because of it. But I'm not just going to explain it. I want you to picture this particular situation. You're 1 hour into speedrunning Pokemon X and Y with one of the best runs you've ever had in your life, but every little bit of time save you've acquired could be lost in a moment's notice, as you're about to set up everything you need to get the glorious Lucky Egg. Starting off your journey towards the Lucky Egg, you run around in the grass, banking on the 20% chance that you encounter Hawlucha, and unfortunately for you, it doesn't show up until after 4 different encounters, so you lose a bit of time. But now that it showed up, you have to catch it specifically in a luxury ball, because any other Pokeball available will not give you anywhere near enough friendship points along the way. So you whack it once with a move to get a better catch rate, and if you hit it even one more time, it'll die, leaving you with no choice but to hope it gets in the ball on the next turn. Truly, there's no real right choice here when it comes to finding and catching a Lucha in an X and Y speedrun, because the odds of all of this coming together are incredibly low, just like the odds of getting the 255 friendship points by the time you earn the 5th gym badge. While you do have reliable methods like leveling up, using items, and participating in gym leader battles, the RNG-based friendship gaining methods that are absolutely required to get there make things even more frustrating, with one such method being the low odds you have of getting a good massage in Salage City, as not every massage you get is created equally. And while we do have the ability to get more than one massage at a time, getting multiple 5 friendship massages in a row is extremely devastating. So when Headbob decided to do a no Lucky Egg speedrun for fun, it raised a few eyebrows when he managed to get a run that was only 6 minutes behind the world record. Then, not even 2 days later, he got another that was only 3 minutes behind the world record. It would be at this point that Headbob started to question everything we relied on for the past 10 years, to the point where he couldn't help but ask, is this actually as good as it seems? And after double checking with other top runners before eventually releasing his findings, it wouldn't take long until more people wanted to try it, more people were getting personal best, and eventually the 3DS King Headbob himself got a run that was less than 30 seconds away from beating the X and Y world record, signaling to the community that the no Lucky Egg revolution was no longer just for fun, but had the real potential to be faster. But how much faster exactly? Where would we end up saving time? And if the Lucky Egg was no longer giving us a ton of experience, would the lack of extra levels throughout the story make it an even more miserable game to speedrun? Well, the answer to that wouldn't take long to find out, as Headbob would get on yet another amazing run on March 12th of 2025. Really quickly, just wanted to say that if you like what you're watching, you should consider subscribing, as I have a lot of videos like this one, and we put a lot of work into them. Headbob would begin this X and Y run by setting his 3DS clock to be late at night, pick the fastest in-game options available, then perform the typical Pokemon main switches X and Y is known for. And by the time he passed the first gym, Headbob would start to gain a lead on the Lucky Egg world record. Since friendship was no longer a necessity on the no Lucky Egg route, Headbob could save time on all the different moments the Lucky Egg route needed to go into buildings, talk to people, and use items whose only purpose was to increase friendship. And the ever-growing time save wouldn't just stop there, as Headbob was skipping more and more things that the Lucky Egg route relied on, and even got a bit luckier on a few run-defining areas and fights. Where the most defining shift in strategy would happen was the moment that Headbob took his first steps into Salage City. While Headbob would lose a bit of time from entering an extra Pokemart inside of Salage City that wasn't present in the Lucky Egg route, in the grand scheme of things, the amount of time this lost was quite minimal, especially when you realize exactly how much of an explosive change going into this mart would shake up the landscape of Pokemon X and Y speedruns forever. The Dusk Ball is a Pokeball that has proved to be one of the greatest Pokeballs ever created for catching even the most legendary of Pokemon. But more importantly for the X and Y speedrunning community, not needing to grab the Lucky Egg meant we no longer needed a luxury ball to catch Hawlucha in, increasing the odds of a successful catch from 20 to 40% on average to a minimum of 50% at full HP. And as an added bonus, the moment Headbob caught one with a Dusk Ball, he could go directly to the gym and challenge it instead of banking on the awful 26% odds to get a good massage, adding a crazy amount of consistency to the two worst sections in a Pokemon X and Y speedrun. But where this part of the route would add consistency, things started to look rough for the rest of the game for Headbob. Because as I stated before, not having that Lucky Egg would affect the amount of extra levels we get along the way. So even though the most frustrating parts of the run were fixed, the same needed to be said for everything past the 5th gym. But where the Lucky Egg seemed to overshadow the potential any other item had for Lucario, the solution to not having it was actually in plain sight. When the Lucky Egg item was the main star of the show, it became mandatory for Lucario to hold on to it until the end of the game, since unequipping it meant less experience, making Mega Evolution seem like a pretty slow alternative with its super slow animations. But surprisingly, those animations weren't as slow as we thought, as Headbob would soon find out that areas where you would take more than 2 turns to KO a Pokemon were actually sped up by Mega Evolution. And even with the lower levels, Headbob wouldn't actually need to Mega Evolve for every single battle outside of 12 separate fights, at least when the route was first theorized. But the moment Headbob was getting closer and closer to a new world record, and more people were playing X and Y again, ideas started to be thrown around to try and involve other items. And one such idea for an item came from Pokemon speedrunning legend Wartab to take advantage of the held item, Black Belt. When a Pokemon holds on to the Black Belt item, the power of your fighting moves is increased by an incredibly substantial 20%. But in order for the item to be worth it, it would have to be easy to obtain and worth equipping in the first place. But as fate would have it, the Black Belt item was not only easy to obtain and made a ton of fights faster, but it also gave Headbob the ability to shave off 3 mandatory Mega Evolutions along the way. So with the power of the community coming together to finalize the no Lucky Egg route, all Headbob would need now is to survive the last half of the game with less levels than ever before, and hope that all the time it took for the world record to get friendship points would be enough to keep his 1-minute lead after the 5th gym. Headbob's 1 minute lead was beginning to shake up a bit as he was entering areas of the game where higher levels really made a difference. Enough of a difference that the Lucky Egg route was a whopping 7 levels higher than he was now. But every time-saving method ever used in a speedrun is one that needs to give more than it takes. And where the Lucky Egg has given us more power and survivability through experience, we're now in a reality where the Lucky Egg we've relied on for the past 10 years takes just long enough to go into extra buildings, get extra levels, and equip extra items for friendship that it's considered slower by nearly an entire minute of time saved. And with this fun, amazing new strategy, Headbob not only beat the previous X and Y record, but he was able to break through the next minute barrier with a 3:38, giving us a monumental run that'll last for ages and an even greater future for Pokemon X and Y speedruns. Hey, don't forget to check out Raid Shadow Legends, by the way, and be sure to join my clan while you're at it. All right, bye.